Ladies and gentlemen, a group of women dedicated to researching and reporting on cold cases. This is the Cold Case Chronicles.
I know your secret, I know the truth, I know your secrets and I'm telling on you.
Oh my gosh, it's fine. Hi. So we're Cold Case Chronicles, 4 girls that got together about a year ago and started a podcast about cold cases, and started out in Indiana, and then a couple of people would message us about doing their families' podcasts from different places, different states. So I have a tendency to not say no to people. That's why.
Well, if they're giving us all the information, she's like, okay, we'll cover this.
Yeah, so we just started expanding out a little bit. I'm Amy, and I guess I'm the one that likes the gross stuff. I'm the one that likes the dead bodies, the forensics, and that kind of thing.
I like it too.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Alicia's the one that's, I guess we're all kind of socially awkward, but Alicia's the one that has to take a lot of pills to even come out here in front of her.
I do, actually.
Yeah. And then Danny, she's the one that's loud and talks really, really fast, so you're going to have to keep up. And
Don't worry, I'll stomp on her foot a little bit.
Yeah. And then Allie down at the end, she is the one that is the science person. She's our pharmacist. She knows all of the science, and she is the brains of all of us. But today we're going to talk about 4 guys who were found in either retention ponds or lakes in Indiana, and we usually work really well with the FBI or the local police whenever we're researching cases and getting information and investigating. But sometimes the police are on the other side of the coin and they're not working very well with us, and they are the problem. And when it becomes that, then that's what we have today, where we don't feel like the police did the job that they should have done. So Allie's going to start with our first case and talk about what we feel like they messed up on a little bit.
Hello. So the first person I'm going to talk about, his name is Walton Matthew Ward. He goes by his middle name, Matt. He lived in Oakland, California at the time of his death, but he came out to Indianapolis to visit his mom, who lived in Carmel. So on October 12th, 2012, Matt is 23 years old and is dropped off by his mom right here in Broad Ripple to go to Pepper's. It's a bar right here in this building that closed down it closed down at the end of 2012, actually. So his plan was to meet a girl that he had met on the dating site OkCupid. They were going to meet with a group of people. And there we go, that's him. They were going to meet with a group of people and kind of have a little bar hopping night. So what ended up happening is that the girl didn't show, but Matt just sat at the bar, had a few beers, and he was, according to camera footage, he was just texting the whole time he was there. Spent about an hour and a half at Pepper's, and then got up and went across the street to the Mine Shaft Saloon, another popular late night hangout. And according to the camera footage there, he had a beer and a shot and was seen sitting at the bar talking to 3 regulars. And then after Mine Shaft, he went to next door to Land Sharks, and he's there until 1:20 a.m., where a bouncer escorts him out onto the street. So he leaves Land Sharks, and then 10 minutes later at 1:30, he places a call to 911, but it only lasts 1 second. And after this is the last outgoing communication on his phone, and no one hears from him afterwards. Now, his mom, Julie, doesn't think anything of it when he doesn't show up that Friday night, because Matthew actually had plans to stay in Broad Ripple and go to the music festival that was happening the next day, that Saturday. And she figured it was okay, because normally what he would do is he'd go to friends' houses after a night of bar hopping, they'd keep partying, and he would just spend the night there rather than trying to find a ride home. So she's waiting to hear from him, doesn't hear anything from him. Sunday night comes, she tries to call his phone, it's dead. And then on Monday, she ends up going to file a missing persons report, where she's told by the caseworker, oh, I'm sure he's just partying. He's probably just like, going, he's 23, he can do whatever he wants. Now, if you excuse me, I have 30 cases of kids under 17 that I have to deal with. So she takes it upon herself, Julie takes it upon herself to go to Broad Ripple, go to the bars that she knows he was at, and talk to the bartenders there. She goes to Pepper's, she goes to Mineshaft, and she goes to Land Sharks. And the bartenders at Pepper's and Mineshaft are both very helpful, but Land Sharks, according to an interview that I read with his mom, the people at Land Sharks were a little bit standoffish. They did mention that they told him at one point apparently at one point he had taken his shirt off, and they told him to put it, taking his shirt off on the dance floor. So he goes ahead and they asked him to put it back on, and apparently he did, but they didn't. They were kind of sketchy, and she said in the interview that she felt like she wasn't getting the whole story. So 10 days go past, and on October 22nd, 2012, construction workers find Matt's body in the White River just off 64th and Westfield over here in Broad Ripple. They were working on the dam. Okay, if you could see her, that's the area where he was found. And they find on his body, they find his wallet and the keys to his mom's house. They don't find his phone. They end up finding his phone because it's turned in by a boat owner who was docking up along the river behind the Applebee's restaurant, which is Joella's now. And if you don't know that area, it's very steep. Like once you go behind the restaurant, it's a very steep drop off down to the river. So what this guy did was he would often park there, and he had a chain embedded in the riverbank that he would pull himself up on to get to the parking lot. So he found the phone. It was dead. It was a BlackBerry. He took it to the Indianapolis Yacht Club because he figured it was somebody who owned a boat that was parked there and dropped it. And they ended up turning it into the police, who turned it on and found the contact info for Julie. So when Walt's body is found, Matt's mom, Julie, actually found out from the Pepper's bar owner that a body had been found in the river. He called her and asked, hey, do you want me to come to the police station with you? Because you shouldn't have to do this alone. So she goes down there and talks to the missing persons detective. And the detectives asked, do you have Walton's dental work? And she said, well, I don't have it. He had braces, but you would be able to identify him by his tattoos. The detective got really defensive and said, well, he has, I just need his dental info. We have protocol we need to follow, forget the tattoos. So they just kind of gave her the runaround. And then she ended up going back, and they brought out Matt's wallet, ID, and keys, and that's when she knew that it was him. And they ended up confirming the tattoos with her at that point. So it was determined that he had drowned. They didn't find any type of trauma, head injury, or defensive wound on him, but also after being in the water for 9 days, it would have been hard to tell based on the extent of the decomposition. IMPD kind of brushed it off as, he was drinking all night, he decided to go for a swim in the canal, fell in, and drowned. Well, number one, it was October. The high that day was 60 and the low was 33. So by 1:30 in the morning, it was probably well into the 30s at that point, so that's unlikely. And also, Matt would often go out, drinking socially, go bar hopping with friends. So he wasn't, new to that scene. And he was also athletic. He was skilled in mixed martial arts. And one thing about the autopsy they came back with that kind of contradicts what IMPD said was the alcohol content in his body. So an interesting fact, the alcohol concentrate in his urine was 0.4 and his heart was 0.28. But alcohol is actually a natural byproduct of human decomposition, which can lead to a huge spike in the amount of alcohol in the body and cause skewed readings as opposed to just trying to figure out the amount of alcohol somebody had from drinking. And this process is actually enhanced in people that have been submerged in water, like Matthew. But in the case of a submerged body, the best way to figure out the content of alcohol that the person had before their death is to get it from the vitreous humor in the eye, which is the gel. I know. Just try to picture a needle going into the eye to get that. It's the gel that's in between the lens and the retina in the eye. But it's such an enclosed organ system that you really don't, it really isn't susceptible to contamination from the rest of the body as it decomposes. So they took a sample from Matthew's eye and found that his level was 0.13, which is above the legal limit of 0.08. But for somebody, that was a pretty active social drinker, it wouldn't be enough to be out of your mind, blacked out drunk. So there's a few reasons why we believe that Matt didn't drown on his own accord. Number one, that 911 call that was placed, the cops immediately brushed it off as a misdial because they were like, oh, that happens a lot of time. People are out drinking, they call 911 on accident, and they mean it to say like area code 913 or something, and they dial 911.
They don't end up dead.
True, that's very true. So the fact that the call was terminated after 1 second means that somebody probably interrupted him. The second, he wasn't overly intoxicated because he's used to going out, and he's also in good physical condition. He was an active athlete. So if he had fallen in the river on accident or if he had been pushed, he could have easily have recovered himself. The river was only 3 feet deep where he was found. Number 4, his phone was always in his pocket. He was glued to that like most of us are. And he wouldn't have discarded it, meaning somebody had probably taken it from him by force. And the last one, he wasn't familiar with the area at all, so he wouldn't have sought out a place to try and potentially go swimming or wandered far off the main strip in Broad Ripple. So it comes down to Matthew's family and friends all believe that somebody was with him that night and knows what happened to him, but no one's talking, and next step is to figure out exactly what happened to him that night. So if you could see on here, the green dot is where Matthew was found. And I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Danny, and she's going to tell you about another young man who met a very similar fate just down the street.
Hey guys, so if you see where this red dot is, I'm not allowed to turn my head or Ronnie, our producer, will be super mad. But anyway, so where this red dot is where our next story takes place. And it only takes place a few weeks after Allie's. So this is November 3rd, 2012. Our 22-year-old Joshua Swalls was just having a normal Saturday with his family. They went shopping, they went to his favorite restaurant, B-Dubs, then they went home, watched TV, very normal day. He was gonna go to his friend's house around 6 p.m., but his friend was gonna take a nap, so he decided to go on a first date with a girl. They went to TGI Fridays, and then they went to the movies. Oh, that's him. So that's Joshua. I'm behind. Okay, and that's the apartment place he went to after his first date. So after his date, he goes home, he picks up his car, and then he goes to his friend's house at Lakewood Lodge Apartments, which is where the red dot was located on that prior map. He gets there around 12:27 a.m. We know this because of text messages he sent to his friend saying he was almost there. And then he was texting the girl he had gone on a date with. His dad says his last text goes out at 1:07 a.m. So he's only there for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then that's the last communication from his phone. The only other thing that is notable that night is his friend, whose apartment he was at, called him 6 times between 3 a.m. and 3:45 a.m. Obviously, Josh never answered. So Sunday comes around, Josh doesn't go home. He's an adult, so his family doesn't think it's too weird. They're worried, but they're like, okay, all right, we're gonna let it happen. Then they text him Sunday night, and they're like, hey, where are you? And Josh has to work Monday morning, and they say he really likes his job. He's good friends with his boss, and he's not one to not show up. He would normally come home, do his laundry, and be ready for work the next day. So when Monday morning comes around and Josh's dad hasn't heard from him, he immediately calls Josh's work to see if he's there. They said no, he didn't show up. So then he calls Josh's mom. His parents were divorced. So he calls his mom to make sure that she didn't know where he was, and she didn't. And then they immediately start searching for Josh. So it's been about 24 hours since he's been missing, but as soon as they know he's missing, they start searching. So the first thing, they call Josh's cell phone, and his friend, whose apartment he was at, answers the phone. And they're like, hey, do you know where Josh is? And they said, no, Saturday night, he just, for an unknown reason, left the apartment. And the dad's like, what were you guys doing? Were you up to no good? What were you doing? And the friend just says, we were smoking, but never clarifies what they were smoking. So that's kind of, and we'll find out later that when the friend speaks to the police, he says that they were drinking, but never mentions smoking. So the dad's always been a little wary of that. When they go to the apartment to look for Josh and to retrieve his cell phone, they also find his t-shirt that he had worn over another shirt that night, and they find out that his car is at the apartment complex, but still no Josh. So the police are involved, and they do their own searches, but they never really include the family. So it was kind of like the family did this massive ground search, and they asked as many people as possible to help in the search. And then the police did some searching of ponds. I suppose they used sonar as well, but they never really included the family. So let's see. Oh, and then Josh's family also asked K-9 Search and Recovery to be involved with the search, and they agreed, but then said there was no real areas of concern to search for him. And then the family got it's called Texas EquiSearch, agreed to help, and they're like a volunteer service that helps search for missing people. Yeah, and as she says, like, they're really good at it. Well, supposedly, IMPD refused to let them help, which I'm not sure how they can refuse someone from searching.
And that happens a lot. In several of our cases, we've noticed that different companies come in, different volunteer organizations come in, and IMPD refuses help from volunteer services. For me, I feel like, anyone that wants to help should be able to help locate. Right.
Yeah, so, we come across this a lot in a lot of our cases where people want to help and they have the resources to help, and then for some reason, and there may be a good reason, but the police they're not always on board. So he went missing November 3rd, so go to November 6th, just a few days later, the family's doing their ground searches, and a manager of a sewing company nearby says, hey, what are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're just searching. Well, they're not probably this nonchalant, but they're searching. They explain the story that he went missing and that they're searching for Josh. And the manager says, okay, well, when I closed my shop Saturday, this wasn't here, but when I came in the office on Monday, there was this shoe. And they go and look at the shoe, and it's Josh's shoe size, and they determine it's Josh's shoe. So they're like, okay, well, while they're looking around, they realize there's a big retention pond. Let me see. I think I have a picture. Okay, so there's a Kroger right around these apartments, and in that parking lot, there's like a strip mall, and then there's this retention pond. So they notice that the top part of the fence is broken, and then the bottom part isn't. So like almost like someone went over it and broke the fence. So the family is like, okay, can we break the rest of the fence and go walk around and look? And they say, yeah, sure, go ahead. So they do, and as soon as they get in there, they're like, we need to call the police, like, to help us search this area. So they call the police, and they show up, and they immediately call the dive team. And so it's just a retention pond, and it's probably no deeper than like 10 feet. So they do a search, and halfway through the search, they find a black jacket, and the family says, can we see it? And they say, no, we're photographing it, but it looks like that jacket has been in there way longer than Josh has been missing. And they're like, okay, whatever. Then they finish searching the retention pond and never find anything. So, okay, it was, a missed opportunity, I guess. Well, then they also find out from a bar worker nearby that he saw a shoe near a dumpster, and it was like the other shoe, but he threw it away, and the trash came, unfortunately, the day right before. So, family continues searching for him every day from like sunup to sundown. Fast forward to November 23rd, this is about 3 weeks later, and a corpse is spotted in a retention pond, and yes, you're right, the same retention pond they had already searched. The body is taken to Marion County Coroner's Office. The coroner right off the bat tells the family, I'm 99% sure it is not Joshua. And the reason we think this is because Joshua had tattoos to identify him, and I'm guessing they didn't see any tattoos. Well, the very next day, they call the family and they said, are you available? We need to talk to you. And they bring over photos, identifying photos of tattoos on the corpse. And yes, they match Josh's. And so the family is like, well, this is weird. But we found out that, so when a body is in water for a certain amount of time, there's this thing called skin slipping. And so if any of you are wondering, like, oh, I'm ready to get out of here and eat dinner, Amy's about to ruin your appetite because, wait, can I go to the next?
No, don't do that
I'm
yet.
going to give a trigger warning. So, this is why I am the weird one, and I love forensics and went to master's school for this. But there's a thing called degloving, and when you are in water for, I mean, even if you're in the spa or anything for 1 or 2 hours and your hands start to crinkle up and get all wrinkly, well, if you're in the water for 3 to 5 days, depending on how long you're there and what type of water, if it's what temperature and what type of water, your skin starts to come off. So if you are in there and think of like a white surgical glove, and the surgical glove comes off, and that's what the top layer of your skin does after 3 to 5 days. Now, then what do? How are they supposed to identify the body if there's no tattoos? What ends up happening is they take that off, that skin layer, and then the forensic technician, puts on a rubber glove and then puts on the person's skin on their hand and then puts the fingerprints down. So some people like
That's
Danny
so
thinks
gross,
that's really
but
gross,
Yeah, it is, but I want to see it.
but it's so amazing.
So don't look if you.
Yeah.
So if you
Turn
have
away
a
if
weak
you don't
stomach and you don't want to see this next slide, look away.
Or you want dinner tonight?
Yeah, but if you want to see what it looks like, keep your eyes open. So that's a person's skin coming off and then putting it on the glove and then fingerprinting.
Yeah, it just looks like a glove, but
Yeah.
just the fact that you know it's skin.
Yes, exactly. Okay, everyone else can.
And now we're back to Josh, so you can look now.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we think happened is they didn't see the tattoos at first, so they immediately were like, it's not him. Because the family had a Twitter page or something, and they notified everyone like, oh, it's not Josh, keep searching for him. Then the very next day, they're like, okay, it is Josh, we need to, I think they still got dental records to identify him, but obviously the family is very upset. So then, they do their typical toxicology report and autopsy to find out what happened. They're expecting it to come back with alcohol or something. The toxicology report was negative for everything, so he had nothing in his system. And then the autopsy was never, from what I've seen, I could not find it anywhere, and from what I've heard, they never gave it to the family, and they just ruled it an accidental drowning. And they also never let the family see his body, so they never really got to say goodbye, unless something way down the road happened where they could. But as far as I know,
Doesn't everyone go swimming in retention ponds in October?
yeah. So in theory, if it's an accidental drowning, he up and left his friend's house for no reason, at least that the friends would say, and then jumped a significantly high fence, as we saw, and then drowned in a retention pond. And his family talks, they did an interview, and they talk about how they have a pool at home that's probably 10 feet deep, and he's a great swimmer and would swim with his family. So it's another case where someone, for reasons unknown, were found in a pond or a river or something when they were good swimmers and good health and came back with, well, I know hers had an alcohol content level, but still it wasn't that high, and he had nothing in his system.
We've all been to the beach or a pool with alcohol, and we still get it.
Yeah,
We're
and you
fine.
can swim. And the thing we're so concerned about is why does this keep happening? And then nobody looks into it. The fact that they rule it an accidental drowning, no one's searching. This is not a case that people are looking into. Like, it's a closed case.
And what about the couch?
And what?
The couch.
So there has been, I've read a few articles that said, from the dad, that said when they were searching, they saw a couch by a dumpster that supposedly matched the friend's couch he had at the apartment, and they thought there were blood marks on it. But I don't know.
And they told the police, and the police did nothing, and then the trash
police
picked
never,
it up, and it was gone.
Yeah, they asked the police to, like, bring it in for evidence, and the police never did. And then the fact that they've never seen the autopsy report, we don't know if he had injuries that could have bled out or something.
If you're not sure, if somebody says, oh, that looks like a roommate or that guy's couch, how do you not pull that in?
Yeah.
Like, what time is it wasting of you?
Yeah, and something we've found, and I'm sure as true crime people you guys have come across as well, police don't have the time to investigate these cases like we want them to. And so that's why it's so important for podcasts and just armchair investigators to research them and keep talking about them so that they aren't forgotten about.
Exactly.
And then we're going to go to 2015, where another man is found dead.
I'm going to talk about Nicholas Scott Spitzer. That's Nick. He was born in January of 1998 and lived in Monticello. He was super involved in sports. So in high school, he had 12 varsity letters, which is just astounding to me.
Wow.
He also excelled
I
in...
did too.
I'm so proud of you.
Why is my husband laughing?
I don't think Amy's serious. Guys, Amy is
Shut
not
your
athletic over
fucking
there.
mouth up there.
Bye, Ronnie. It was nice knowing you.
Continue.
He also excelled in academics, so it was just everything came easily to him. He's super adorable. He's good in sports. He's smart. He just has amazing friends and family. In 2011, he moves to Indianapolis to attend Aveda Fredericks Institute, and he earned his cosmetology license in January of 2012. Well, you've all been to the hairdresser, and you know they're just like they become your best friend, right? They know all your things, they know what you like, what you don't like. He's perfect for this job. His boss says he has such an ease with building a rapport with his clients. And he's also stayed friends with so many high school people while he's building new relationships in Indianapolis. He's still building new relationships back at home in Monticello. So he graduates and he moves back home to Monticello and works as a stylist at Fabulous 101. And he takes a weekend trip to Indy with his friends to visit people here. That was in August 14th of 2015. He came here to party, so he was bar hopping, doing drugs, things we've all done when we were 25.
Yeah. Not me.
Okay. Okay.
Amy's such a liar. Don't believe anything she says.
You don't know me.
You're so pretty.
Thank you.
So he's out with his friends on Saturday. According to the comments on a page that's trying to get more info about his disappearance and obvious death. Sorry, guys.
Spoiler alert.
I ruined that. I'm sorry. They said they saw him at 14th and Delaware, which is really near where he was visiting. He was staying downtown Indy. There are more rumors that he was doing party and play, where you take like meth or GHB and then hook up with someone to make it party and play.
We've all done that. No.
Wait a minute. You said no.
No, not really.
So this person says that he's on Adam for Adam, DMing people to try to hook up, which it's called Adam for Adam and not Adam and Eve. So Nick is
He's homosexual.
And his friends say he left to go hook up with someone, and they never saw him again after that. So that was Saturday night. Sunday morning around 2 or 3 a.m., they get their last message from him via Facebook Messenger. 2 days after they last heard from him, his mom reports him missing because just like Josh, he doesn't come home, but it's okay. He's an adult. He was gone for the weekend. Maybe he decided to stay later. But he had an appointment on Monday, and his mom said that he never misses appointments. So she started getting concerned. A bunch of friends and family came down to Indy, posting flyers and searching for him. A few days go by, and a boater finds him in a pond. Oh, sorry.
We don't know how to backwards it.
Well, there was just a picture of a pond up there.
Can we just hit this button?
I tried hitting it. Oh, you're better at this. I don't know how to push buttons, I guess. So these are actual photos of his recovery. So up there is like the work, and then the other one is the pond. So the pond is at 96th and Gray Road. So it's just a little east of all the car dealerships, but you know those, you've all driven by it. It's big blue silos, and there's a bunch of dust in the air. That pond is right there.
It's not one that you would just want to go take a swim in.
No, because it's runoff from
Yes.
that.
It's also not somewhere he could have walked.
No, so at that time, in 2015, they were still doing construction on some of those houses. There is a well-established neighborhood back there, but they were still building that area.
Do you know how far it is from where he was last seen?
96 blocks.
Far.
Well, downtown to the north side.
Yeah, so about 10 miles.
They determine it's Nick, and obviously everyone is distraught because he has like 1,800 Facebook friends, which we know they're all besties on Facebook, but
We looked at his Facebook, and he has a lot of friends.
Yes.
And I mean, like, everyone they love him. They were all just
yeah,
like,
no
a lot
one,
of-
it's not like
People don't love
we
being
knew
like that on
him
my
because
Facebook.
somebody else knew him. His mom has said on Facebook that she pictures him on a beach with a drink in one hand and his phone in the other. But there's no mention of anyone pinging phones. It's 2015, like that's well established. Everybody's had a smartphone for like 5 years, 6 years. So if he's that attached to his phone that's how his mom pictures him, where is the phone? Oh, I forgot this other part. He was reportedly last seen with a prominent businessman from Indianapolis. And this same individual, whose name had been removed because it can't be disclosed, because he's a prominent businessman.
Is he here?
Are you a prominent businessman?
Is there
You
a
don't have to
prominent
raise
business-
your hand. Oh, there's a guy back there.
Yeah,
There's one over there.
it's him.
Ronnie? So he
If it's
got
my husband, I'm going to be pissed.
he got on Twitter and said, "How can we find you when you look like Beyonce in your pictures and Waka Flocka in the street?" Which is really great, but not when you were also reported seen with this person who was found dead. So somebody knows who this guy is and hasn't gone to the police. It's considered that this could also be a hate crime because he was a homosexual. Amy, I think you know who someone.
I do. I know someone who was actually meeting through a dating app in Indianapolis, and he thought he was meeting another gay guy, and he ended up meeting a person who hated gays, and he got the literal shit beat out of him when he met this person. So you never know what you're going to
Was he
meet
a
up
prominent
with.
businessman?
I don't know. It may have been a prominent businessman.
So that's also something to consider in Nick's death. Some people call him Nicholas, some people call him Nick.
And Nico.
Oh, and his Facebook page is Nico, so.
Yes.
Was it ruled an accidental drowning?
I could not find an autopsy report or
No,
a
they would not
coroner's
release
report.
any of that.
But they're not like investigating it.
No.
He just wound up 10 miles away.
So I'm
dead.
assuming it says accidental drowning, but nowhere can I find that it's been released to the family.
So 1 month after this happened, surprisingly, I'm going to talk about a case that happened at IU. And a lot of you have heard, I'm sure, of Lauren Spear, Jill, but why are you taking that away from me?
I forgot to, I can't
Give it
push
to
the button.
me.
I couldn't.
Remotes are so
Stop.
hard, especially when there's only 3 buttons. Thanks, Jada.
Lauren Spear, Hannah Wilson, Jill Behrman, they're all names that are popular around IU and in Indiana. You also hear about them nationwide because they're white females that went missing or murdered at IU. But this guy, Joseph Smedley, you might not have heard of, but he also went missing at IU in 2015, 1 month after this guy went missing and was found dead. Now, Joseph was a 20-year-old biochemistry student, and he was a member of the Sigma Pi fraternity. He was doing great. He loved school, all the things that go along with being an IU student. And on September 27th, 2015, he did everything that was a normal day for him. He went out and he had dinner at Noodles and Company. He came back to his house where he lived in off-campus housing with his 2 fraternity brothers, and they watched baseball, they watched a Cubs game, they watched a movie, and according to his fraternity brothers, they then walked outside at 11 p.m. and looked at the blood moon, and then they came inside and they all went to bed at around 11:30 in their bedrooms separately. That was it, according to them. Well, then at 4:15, this is where his house is at A, if you can see that. At 4:15, where B is, his phone pings, and that was a message to his sister. It was a text message that was received, and it says, "Viv, I love you. I'm leaving the country. By not telling you why, I'm keeping you safe and protected. Please don't try to contact me at this number. It won't work. I'll contact you once I'm set up overseas. Thank you for everything, Viv. I love you, and I'm sorry." Okay. He doesn't have a passport. This is just very uncharacteristic, and she's asleep, so she doesn't get this message right away. The next ping on his phone, up there at C, is super far, and it's 2.5 miles. Now, I'm obviously an athlete, but no, not at all. I don't like to sweat. But 2.5 miles, I literally Googled this because that's how unathletic I am.
You didn't even try to walk 2.5 miles?
No, I didn't. I would never. So 2.5 miles in 30 minutes. It can be done, but at 5 a.m., that's a lot. So he apparently, according to the police, walked 2.5 miles from B to C at 4 a.m. Now, his phone pings at C, and we know that phone pings vary a little bit, so it's not necessarily an exact point. And then it pings at D at 6:30, and then it goes off, just completely turns off. Well, Vivian wakes up that next morning and she looks at her phone and she's like, what the hell, right?
She literally
This-
responds, LOL, shut up.
Yeah,
'Cause
which
she's
is
like-
what I would say to my brother if I woke up with that text. I'd be like, okay, you're high, go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, and she said, shut up, LOL, you better pay your bill today. Like, I'm not dealing with this. Well, then when he didn't respond several times, then she started getting worried. So she contacted IU Police Department there on campus. They go do a welfare check, and then they start calling around different police departments. And one of them said that he was in jail. And so they called her and they said, he's in jail. There ended up being a mix-up, and there was actually a Jonathan Smedley who was in jail, not a Joseph Smedley. But that caused several hours of time that went by that was wasted. So she ended up going to Bloomington. She went to his house. His roommates, by the time she got there, were really freaking out, and they said that he left a note on his bed. So this is the actual note. It said, had to leave the country. Don't try to contact me via cell. It won't work. We'll contact you once set up overseas. Smedley, 928. There's a few things wrong with this note. First of all, a lot of people have said that it looks like it was written by someone who is left-handed, and he was not left-handed. Either way, the other thing is where it says it won't work, the K in won't work looks like it was a little odd. And once and overseas looks like people were trying to make the letters a certain way. So if you were in a hurry, it just looks a little weird. And also, the fact that you put the date, 9/28, I don't know what to make of that. When they found the note, they were curious. They got the police out there. The police took his laptop, and there was a group me message that was from the fraternity that he was in. And the head of the fraternity, which I don't know what they're called, the president, the god, I don't.
Amy likes to call him.
What's that?
We always call him Daddy.
Yeah, the daddy. He sent out a message to the entire fraternity that said, if there is anything bad that has happened, he is not officially a brother of Sigma Pi on the roster. Not to say anything to police or people on campus. So they're already covering their ass in case something has happened to him. Then Friday, October 2nd, 5 days after he went missing, at around 7 p.m., fishermen at Griffey Lake found his body floating in just shallow water there at Griffey. And he had a backpack on, really tight, and then sweatpants, a black t-shirt, and a black hoodie. He had binoculars around his neck, which is curious because he had been looking at the moon at his house earlier. And then at Griffey, it's weird because we went out there and there's no lighting, so it's extremely dark. And Joseph didn't have a car, so everywhere he had to go, he either had to walk or he had to ask for a ride. And in his backpack, he had some school papers, he had an external hard drive, and he had 66 pounds of rocks. The police instantly said it was a suicide. I know people have walked into water and drowned themselves before, but 66 pounds of rocks that you literally had to go from one side of the lake and bring to the other and put in your backpack and drown is a lot. It didn't go along with the whole scenario, the whole narrative of I'm leaving the country. So there was a lot that went along with that. And they did an autopsy and they determined that it was a suicide. Well, there we go. That was it. They didn't want to talk about it anymore. They wrote it off. However, we have tried, and the family has tried to get his laptop and his cell phone back because his cell phone wasn't on his person. When they found his body, he had no identification, no wallet, no cell phone, and his cell phone was found about a half a mile from his body. The family has tried to get his laptop and his cell phone from the police, and they said they can't release it. But if it's a suicide and they write it off as a suicide, why can't they get it? What are they hiding?
We definitely know how well that department works.
Right.
Especially now.
Yes, and they actually this week we have talked with an attorney, and we are getting the records from the police station this week. And this is the actual podcast that we are in the middle of. So hopefully we will be able to finish this story in the next couple of weeks and find out what's in the police records, what they'll release. Because the autopsy showed there was no abrasions to the body, but the second autopsy found by the family showed there was an abrasion on the back. And I spoke with the fisherman who saw him, and they said that his face was busted up. That was not listed on the autopsy at all. Very interesting. So if you want to know more about that, then tune into our podcast, Cold Case Chronicles, and hopefully we will get those police records this week and be able to determine more.
We could send some more emails down south.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they have a petition and a GoFundMe for Joseph.
Yes. Yeah, and it's Justice for Joseph on Facebook. If you want to look up, his sister has started a Facebook page, so it's really good, Justice for Joseph. And we end all our podcasts by
Have the day you deserve.
especially if you got away with murder in Indiana.
I know your secrets and I'm
Oh, stick around because we're all going to have, if you have any questions, all of
I
us.
think we're going to do a Q&A.
Yeah.